All right, let's move away from Zambia now. Ghana's foreign ministry issued a release on Sunday indicating that preparations are underway to evacuate Ghanaians who are stranded in Sudan following its military conflict. The release said the Ghanaian embassy in Egypt, with concurrent accreditation to Sudan, together with the Ghana Honorary Consulate in Khartoum, is putting arrangements in place for the evacuation. A number of Ghanaian nationals, particularly students, have been affected by the conflict, said the statement, noting that all of the Ghanaian nationals are safe. Of course, we saw the image of the notice on screen there. It says the government of Ghana joins the international community to appeal to the warring factions to cease fire and allow negotiations to resume for the sake of peace and safety of the people of Sudan. The release also added. Joining us now is Ghanaian journalist Wilberforce Asari to give us more updates on this. Good morning, Mr. Asari. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Mr. Asari. Can you hear us? All right. We seem not to be able to hear you. You might want to likely unmute your device. But just as Asari said, what has been the latest coming from Ghana concerning students and, of course, nationals who are stuck in Sudan? So all of us, you might need to unmute your device so we can hear you and get the latest, especially coming from the West African country, Ghana. Well, hopefully Mr. Wilberforce gets a hang of the technicalities of joining us this morning. But let's take a look at what's really happening in Sudan. It's worthy of note that we here at News Central have done more, especially in ensuring that we keep you updated with what's going on with the latest that's got to do with countries and everyone who is trying as much as possible to evacuate its nationals and especially get them back home to safety. Now, there are a lot. The numbers are still not verified according to sources, but you have over more than thousands, like they put it, of students who have come from different parts of Africa and are actually schooling in Sudan before the Sudan clash indeed began. Mr. Wilberforce, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Okay. Yes, we can. All right. So we were asking initially, you want to bring us up to speed with what the latest is concerning Ghana and what the government is doing to ensure that they evacuate all its nationals and students who are indeed in Sudan.
All right, so Ghana doesn't have an embassy directly in Sudan, but the embassy in Egypt, which is a neighbor to Sudan, has concurrent jurisdiction as far as Sudan is concerned. And so our Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration has announced that it is in touch with the embassy officials in Egypt planning an evacuation. You know that several countries have already conducted evacuation exercises in Sudan. And that's because of the volatile situation that is ongoing there between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support force that has resulted in several weeks and days of fighting in that particular jurisdiction. And so it is an issue of concern here in Ghana, and that's because we have had previous situations where, particularly when the war in Ukraine started, our evacuation exercise was delayed and it led to some of students, Ghanaian students in Ukraine and what have you, suffering a lot of damage and all that. And so the authorities here are moving swiftly to avoid the challenges that the country had previously when we had this situation in Ukraine. And so I can tell you that the ministry here in Ghana is moving swiftly with the embassy in Egypt to coordinate efforts to ensure that Ghanaian citizens who are serving in all kinds of capacities in Sudan are evacuated from that particular jurisdiction. If you follow the evacuation exercises, you would see that most countries are having to either evacuate by road from Khartoum, which is the capital, to other safe places in Sudan before they are able to airlift. Some people are also doing, some countries are using helicopters and all that. I believe that the Ghanaian authorities will resort to the use of road transport from the capital, where there seems to be a lot of tension, to other places where they can comfortably fly the Ghanaian personnel and Ghanaian citizens from Sudan back into Ghana.
Is there an idea of how many people we're talking about here? And is the Ghanaian government capable of moving everyone? Because Nigeria is talking about
But
more than 5,000
well, in terms
persons.
of numbers, it is not too clear how many people or how many Ghanaians are in Sudan. But what we do know is that Ghanaians, just like Nigerians, which is where you guys are, we are virtually in every part of the world. And so I will not be surprised that we are talking about a little over 2,000 Ghanaians who may be in Sudan for all kinds of engagements and activities. And so, really, I want to peg the number at not less than 2,000 based on analysis that are done looking at the way Ghanaians travel and the Ghanaian population across several African countries. I want to believe that we have nothing less than 2,000 Ghanaians in Sudan.
Nothing less than 2,000. Well, the numbers indeed keep increasing, just like we rightly mentioned that there seems not to be a creditable source that you can really hold on to and say these are the exact numbers of Africans who are indeed stuck in Sudan. But let's talk about Ghana's a way of looking at evacuating these students. We also spoke this morning about many who are choosing to use the road networks. You talked about helicopters as well. In Ghana over there, has there been any panel that's been set up like we've seen in other African countries where they've set up panels or better still, they've formed committees to start looking deep into the evacuation process? Anything like that being done in Ghana as well?
Well, so what I do know in answer to your question will be the fact that the African Union Commission has had a virtual meeting. And in that virtual meeting, most African countries participated, and it was for purposes of first finding peace in Sudan and also making sure that they are able to rescue people who may be entrapped in the country following the fighting that is ongoing there. So the effort has been at continental level. I also know that at the United Nations level, they are also doing everything possible to broker peace within Sudan and also to ensure that they evacuate persons who may be in danger. What is obvious is the fact that there are richer countries such as the United States, such as France and the United Kingdom. They have the logistical abilities to be able to go into the country with all their forces and evacuate their people, which we know they have done. For example, the United States has evacuated all of its embassy staff from Sudan using military helicopters, which are very powerful equipments and all that. And so the Sudanese army cannot withstand it and all that. But for those who are less endowed countries like those of us in Africa, we don't have that technological power to be able to go in there to go and rescue our people. And that is the reason why the international processes that are ongoing are extremely important, because if they are able to get a ceasefire, then it opens up opportunities to even use the airport in Khartoum to land and fly planes, which makes evacuation exercises easier. But once the fighting is going, it's ongoing, it will be very difficult for you to evacuate your people if you don't have the manpower and the military might that countries like the United States and France have, which we have seen them using to evacuate their people. So it's a dicey situation, and I think that what the African continent should be focusing on is to broker peace. Let there be ceasefire, let there be a trance, so that evacuating people will be much more easier.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it should also be noted that there might be Ghanaian or other African citizens in Sudan, but not necessarily Khartoum. So they do not necessarily, or they may not necessarily be at risk. And so it's not every single person that needs to leave at this time. I don't think so. But of course, we encourage for peace. But before we let you go, I also want to get your thoughts on the whole idea of peace. The way that the story has been told, it's been described as two warring generals who don't like each other, and are trying to take power from one or the other. Is this true, or is there more to the story than meets the eye?
Well, yeah, so the issues of Sudan are quite disturbing, particularly when it comes to the armed forces. And it is very clear on the face of the record that there is a regular army, and as a result of the past of Sudan, there is also a resistance force. Now, there have been agreements that have been reached in recent time to marry the two military institutions that exist in one country. And that effort of marrying the two institutions, and the two, when I say two institutions, I'm talking about the regular army in Sudan, which is the Sudanese armed forces, and then the paramilitary rapid support force, which is known as the RSF. Now, marrying the two has become a problem, and recently we saw that they met, they had an agreement, they signed the pact, they showed it to the whole world, and they initiated the process of marrying the two military institutions to become one, representing the Sudanese. I think that in the course of that process of bringing them together, that is what has resulted in this clash, because there have been disagreements. And we've seen the two generals. We know their images, we know their names, we know that indeed they are arguing with each other over modalities. I listened to an interview on CNN with the military commander who is in charge of the RSF, and he was very obvious and saying that the military commander in Sudan has breached certain spaces within the agreement that they reached. And then there was also another interview with the military commander, and he also says that he thinks that the RSF is committing atrocities against the state, and that is the reason why the armed forces has risen to stop them from the things that they are doing. Essentially, there is disagreement between these two generals, and I tell you what, there is no military in the world that can have two generals. Every military must have one commander, and if the two of them cannot come together and to allow one of them to be the commander, then they will never have any kind of military peace in Sudan. At all material times, it is important that they come together and one become the commander and the other become his assistant. That is the only way out, because no military can be taking instructions from two commanders. There will always be conflict.
All right. Mr. Sari, of course, will continue to push for peace and hope that these two factions, find reasons or find ways to meet in the middle. Most importantly, the killings need to stop and the war needs to stop in Sudan for the continent to move forward. Thank you very much.